Moriden Athluan.
The story of his near single-handed assault on Windhelm and his execution of the traitor Ulrich Stormcloak of Windhelm are staples of the Imperial Legion. His devotion to duty, his zeal in combat, his dedication to the safety of the Empire and its citizens are told to all new recruits of the Legion.
Though his actions in the Civil War were what drew the eyes of all Tamriel to him, it is not what he is best known for. No, for it was after his days in the Legion that he began to show his true dedication to both the gods and the people of the Empire.
Come now and hear the tale of the Moriden Athluan's glorious mercenary days, and the great good that he did for all the people of Skyrim.
The bards can
worked
always
the
be
gods'
trusted
names.
to take a story and turn it to their own ends. There are elements of truth to their story. The truth, though, the truth is not what the bards would have you believe. Frostfall, 4th Era, 201. I stayed off the main roads, trying to shortcut some of the larger loops to shorten my travel time to Iverstead. For the first hours, this also meant that I was away from other travelers, and even the wildlife seemed to be scarce as I continued to make my way towards Fort Dunstad. I soon discovered that the lack of other living things was no coincidence. I crested a small rise and saw a massive structure still on fire, burning slowly to the ground. Forgetting my plans, I raced to see if there were survivors. There were no survivors, and the bodies that remained told me plenty about what had happened. When first ascending towards the still smoldering ruin, I saw an animal the likes of which I've never seen, something that I might best describe as what the Daedric version of a hound might look like. Once I reached the main building, however, I was able to take at least a guess about who the creature served. This building, I think, was the Hall of Vigilance. I've never had much interaction with them. They are another holy order dedicated to Stendarr, I believe, and self-tasked with the removal of all things Daedric from the world. Included in this mandate is another group, vampires, and from the bodies I'm seeing, it seems that the vampires have come calling and destroyed the hall. I've heard of them attacking homes, but never something this big before. I suddenly recalled the vampires I had seen walking the roads, the rumors that their numbers were rising, all the indications that I had ignored before. I don't think any action on my part might have prevented this attack, but I had to wonder. And, strangely, I found myself wondering what it might be like to have the kind of power that a vampire did. It was a fleeting thought, gone in a moment, but it still happened. I did what I could to give proper honor to the fallen, but there was little to be done. I turned from the massacre and continued my journey toward the throat of the world. I stopped over in Fort Dunstad to warm myself and relay the news of the attack on the whole of the Vigilance. My rank, though even more empty than before, and my name were enough for it to be taken seriously. The fort commander promised to send a patrol to take care of the dead and see what could be learned, but she also didn't expect to find much. With that done, I continued my travels toward Iverstead. The Legion passed me through without difficulty, of course, but I have to admit that even near a month since I was so abruptly let go from their ranks, it still hurt to see them. And if there was still a tiny ember of anger there, well, who could blame me? I passed by Windhelm in the mid-afternoon. Notice I say passed by, not stopped in. I cannot bring myself to visit this place again yet. Not after the betrayals that happened here. No, I would rather stay in the wilds in the middle of the fiercest winter storms with nothing more than a meager fire and a thin bedroll than go inside the city just yet. Once, I was told that people and animals will go far out of their way, do the most unusual things imaginable to avoid things they know will cause them pain. Windhelm holds nothing but pain for me. I stopped on the slopes of the great rift from which both the city and hold takes its name. A giant fall-off from the heights of the rift to the hot pools of Eastmarch. I might have pushed on further, but the night was particularly dark, with only a few small breaks in the clouds, where some of the gods' fire could be seen. Tomorrow, Iverstead, and the ascent of the 7,000 steps. 22 Frostfall, 4th Era, 201. Reaching High Hrothgar was, as many of my journeys have been of late, more a question of the time it takes, rather than any particular difficulties. I look back on my first trip out of Windhelm, a bare 2 months ago, and I almost laugh at the timid and worry-filled Mer I was then. Trolls would have caused me great distress back then. Today, I killed 2 almost casually as I ascended. Time had completely changed my perspective. I met with the Greybeards, who, after taking possession of the horn, taught me the final word of unrelenting force, and allowed me to take their understanding of the word. With all 3 words in my possession, the shout should be far more powerful than even with 2. Angir warned me very specifically about its increased potential, which I tucked away for later. At that point, having passed all their tests, I was formally acknowledged as Dragonborn, a title which has not been in use since the conclusion of the Oblivion Crisis and the death of the Septim line of Tamrielic emperors. Surrounded by the 4 remaining members of the Greybeards, they unleashed a full greeting upon me in the dragon tongue. My world shook. My vision blurred. As much as I had learned of the words of power, nothing had prepared me for what would amount to almost casual conversation between dragons. I nearly fell to my knees. And then, mercifully, it was over. The other Greybeards left to continue their studies. Angir stayed with me to ensure I was unharmed. I asked what the greeting had meant, and he chuckled slightly. He had forgotten, he said, that I wasn't versed in the language, as they were. As a rough translation, he said it had meant this. Long has the storm crown languished, with no worthy brow to sit upon. By our breath, we bestow it upon you, in the name of Kine, in the name of Shor, and in the name of Atmora of old. You are Izmir now, the dragon of the north. Hearken to it. Ysmir, Talos of Atmora, Tiber Septim I. Those names changed the world in ways both great and terrible, and now my name would be listed alongside theirs, the first Dragonborn of the Dunmiri. Ongir saw this realization settle into me, holding his silence. When I had recovered somewhat, he spoke again, saying that if I wished to learn more of the voice, there were more walls scattered all over Skyrim, each with carvings that I could learn from. More power to be had. I agreed, and was told of a word of power in a place called the Forsaken Cave, near Windhelm. Though I will not be looking for it immediately, it is now on my list of places to visit in the near future. For the moment, though, rest. And then to Riften to hopefully be done with Mara. 23 Frostfall, 4th Era, 201. The early morning snows turned to rain as I descended into Ivarstead, and those rains stayed with me all the way to the Temple of Mara in Riften. I had hoped that my work for Mara would be concluded. I was, however, disappointed. The priestess had shown me an example of young and fickle love, as well as a more mature one. Now she wanted me to see a love that was so strong that, though the two involved were now dead, they were still bound to Nirn as a result. Fortunately, I'm not going across the entire province again. Only to Whiterun Hold. I wasted no time. I turned and began the walk back to Ivarstead, where I would stay the night, before crossing the Throat back into Whiterun Hold tomorrow morning. 24 Frostfall, 4th Era, 201. I knew only that the location I was being sent to was in the western portions of Whiterun Hold, so it made logical sense to me that I should go to Rorikstead to get more information on where I should be looking for the monument these spirits were supposedly near. I stopped, therefore, at the Frostfruit Inn, and after I got my room arranged for, I started asking around. Turns out I had passed it during my walk today, so I will be backtracking somewhat, but only somewhat. Assuming this goes to plan, I should be heading straight back to Riften and an end to this foolishness. So I'll at least be moving in the right direction. 25 Frostfall, 4th Era, 201. The morning started on a good note, with a lone vampire attack. You question why I say a good note. I answer, because it means the day was not boring. Yes, it can be that simple. It does, however, continue to highlight the increasing number of vampire attacks in recent weeks. This bears thinking on. And it was now that a distant memory from a month ago in the wake of the end of the Stormcloak Rebellion came back to mind. An orc at the gates of Windhelm, inviting any who wished to fight the vampires to join the Dawn Guard. I'm not sure I want to fight them, but more information about them is certainly in order. And if I recall correctly, the Dawn Guard were supposed to be gathering in Dayspring Pass, or a fort just past it, conveniently not overly far southwest of Riften. How very interesting. The situation with the long-dead lovers, however, was far less so. I found the first one, easily enough given the directions I'd been given. The site is Gilkar's monument, site of a battle of some kind several hundred years ago. Her partner had died in the fighting, it seems, and she has been trying to find him among the dead ever since, not realizing that she is, herself, long since passed. Though there are no bodies here, there is a cemetery in Whiterun Hold, though it is some distance from here. It's possible that the other ghost haunts there instead, though I have no assurance I'm not wasting my time. Then again, wasting my time has been a specialty of ghosts these last months. I did find the second, but not quite where I had expected. I found him on the south shores of an unnamed lake in the middle of the tundra plain. From his comments, he never reached the main battle, having died the night before when they were attacked. Gilkar had made camp here, but the fires were visible for miles, and being at the bottom of a shallow valley didn't help them either. I am escorting the dead soldier to his dead wife, where I'm sure they will have a simply wonderful reunion that I could quite simply care less about at this point. I want this over with. There are things afoot that I am finding may be far more worth my time. The two met up. A soldier who died the day before the major battle, and his widow who still searched for his body years afterwards. Neither understood what was happening to them, but there was one thing that they did know. They loved each other, and they were together. They started floating off into the sky at that point, which was when what little interest I had ended. It is time to finally be done with this. To Riften, though I think I might just stop in Whiterun for just a few moments. I'm done with walking. It's time to buy a horse. My interesting day was not over just yet, however. It has been days since I had last seen a dragon. That streak ended today with a bright green-colored dragon that reminded me somewhat of a live Spriggan. Not a hardy beast, this one, though a few of the Whiterun Guard who were in the area at the time did not fare well against it. Die it did, however, and in the words of the Greybeards, I absorbed its soul to add more knowledge to my collection. I don't have any words to connect this knowledge to, but with the Greybeard's assistance, this will change in time. I had to wait for the stable master to finish his noon meal, but shortly after, I was mounted on my new horse and 2,000 septims lighter. A bit pricier than I would like, but I'm not in a position to argue the quality of a horse. I simply don't have the experience. What I do know is that with 4 feet under me instead of my own 2, I should start making far better time. If I am to travel around Skyrim as I have these last months in the future, I would prefer wasting less time just getting from place to place. To Riften, or if I have to, Ivarstead, for the night. I severely underestimated the speed of a Mer on horseback. I'd heard that they had speed and endurance both, but it wasn't even 4 hours later that I was in the streets of Riften. 4 hours, when walking would have had me here most likely tomorrow afternoon. Should have done this weeks ago after Windhelm. Which means that it is time to talk to the Mara priestess and end my association with them. I will admit that Mara does have at least some power and influence in this world, but all I see is a power that has no use. You hear ballads and stories that talk in glowing terms about the life-changing power of love, but I'm not seeing it. I appreciate the dedication, but I don't see the point. I kept the conversation with the priestess as short as I could. She tried to build off the work I had done for her, tried to get me to admit that love could be the greatest power for good that existed, that such a power deserved to have equally powerful people working to promote it. Maybe she believes that. I do not. While I wish her no ill, I cannot put my belief in such a thing. Love will not kill a dragon. Love will not prevent a rebellion. Love will not stop the injustices I saw in Windhelm. I wished her well, but turned my back firmly on her and walked out of the temple and into the Riften afternoon. I made my way to the Bee and Barb. Epilogue. I spent several hours in the Bee and Barb that night. Like the day I walked away from Ulfric's cooling corpse, I somehow knew that this was the end of another chapter in my life. I had lost things that I believed important. The Legion, the friendship of the people of Windhelm, a purpose to keep me motivated and moving, and found something new to believe in. Not the gods. Don't believe that bard's tale rubbish. They would have you believe that the gods serve us. In a way, they aren't wrong, but they would have us serve them to earn that so-called service. I can't recall where I heard the phrase, but such a situation was once described as a "love me, fear me, do as I say, and I will be your slave" situation. You think you are the one benefiting, but the only one getting any benefit, really, is the gods. The Daedra are much the same, but at least they are honest about it. They, the vampires, others that Man and Myr consider dark, all of them are more honest about their offers, not the gods, no. I served them briefly, and I did find a new purpose. The truth is not what the bards would have you believe. The truth is that I learned to be free. There is only one person you dare to serve: yourself. I would soon learn that I was wrong. But that is another story for another night in another tavern. Until then, I will be watching.